Creative Roots is a project produced by Imrana Mahmood, commissioned and presented by Revolution Arts, and supported by Inspire FM and Arts Council England. Revolution Arts is a small but mighty arts organisation based in the Marsh Farm area of Luton. They work out of their base, Marsh Farm Community Centre, to uncover brilliant stories about local people and places. The Creative Roots podcast showcases voices of participants with a connection to Bury Park, involved in various workshops including mindful henna, Arabic calligraphy and street art, all with a view of exploring identity and native languages. The creative work invites participants to share and explore their own understandings of heritage, belonging and spirituality.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Creative Roots podcast. My name is Imrana Mahmood and this podcast is commissioned and presented by Revolution Arts, supported by Inspire FM and Arts Council England. And on today's podcast, I have the pleasure of speaking to Hibah, who was one of the participants of the calligraphy workshop. So Assalamu alaikum, Hibah.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, really, really well. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us today. So I guess if we dive straight in, my first question for you is, what does creativity mean to you?
That's a good question. Well, if we first look at the dictionary definition of creativity, we'd find that it means the use of imagination or original ideas to create something. But I think for me, creativity would be about learning and exploring who I am. It's the ability to express myself in a way that makes me feel happy and comfortable. For me, it would be about exploring different cultures, ethnicities, trying new foods, diving deep into rich history. And I think it would also be about finding different techniques and pathways for me to be in me becoming a better academic. And it also expanding my passion for writing and poetry. So I don't think for me at least, I don't think creativity is confined to one form of expression, but it's more of a mindset, a way of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think, completely echo what you're saying in terms of, definitely a mindset, because I guess to some extent, whatever you put your mind to, and if it takes any form of expression, right? So that could be, like you said, I mean, it could be something like poetry, it could be something maybe more, visual, or something that you listen to. So I guess it can kind of embed any facet of our lives, and I think that's what makes it, I think, really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a tool for self-discovery, really, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. Exactly. Absolutely. So then I'm kind of interested to know, so would you say that, when you think about creativity in the way that, you've kind of described it, is it something that was always, I guess, part of your childhood? And, and in what way, I guess, did that kind of manifest when you were younger?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I would say creativity was a huge part of my childhood. Growing up, like my parents, they emphasized the importance of visiting different museums, exploring history, just really understanding the world around us. I think they really they made sure we were able to explore and avenue different pathways into understanding the world. We'd go on frequent road trips across England, and I think that really shaped my curiosity and even developed my love for storytelling. And also being the eldest of four siblings and having a twin sister who is now in Jannah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant her the highest ranks. That naturally meant stepping into like a third parent role. And I think a lot of eldest siblings can relate to that responsibility. My parents, they were both they were hard working, but they would be out of the house most of the time. And that often meant that I would then take upon the role of looking after my younger siblings. And I remember one particular moment, and that still sticks with me to today. My younger sister, she had World Book Day at school, and she had completely left her costume to the last minute, and she was in tears. because she really wanted to dress as Maleficent, but we had no time to buy or order her anything.
Mm.
So then I was like, okay, well, now I need to do my bit. I remember gathering whatever I could find at home. I think I got like a black sheet or like a
Mm.
big black cloak. I put it on her, wrapped it around her, put a belt on her. I remember finding a stick in the garden and getting black, like, you know, those thick, durable tapes.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
remember wrapping that around the stick, and that was her stick.
Mm.
I even remember making her like a headpiece out of cardboard. I cut it up into different pieces. I made a mold, cut two circles on either side, one for each of the horns that Maleficent has. And
Mm.
she loved it. She absolutely loved it.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's so, I mean, it's such a, I guess, such a cool memory that you're kind of sharing, and well done on, for you for taking for taking on that role. And I also am the eldest of in my family, and totally resonate, I think, with that. Yeah, I guess that sense of sometimes a responsibility that falls on you, and I guess, yeah, for sure, especially when you're younger, and that sense of what, playfulness, imagination. And I think World Book Day definitely kind of brings that out in people, and I think it's such a lovely thing that, schools and other kind of I guess spaces, to kind of really encourage that love of reading, I think is nice. And I mean, though I have to admit, and I shouldn't really be saying this, but as a mum, I'm definitely not that mum. I tend to be the one who's like, okay, where can I buy something? Um, but but I am always in awe of parents, carers who've been able to really build something with their own hands. And I think this really, really beautiful kind of gesture. And yeah, and like, just like you're kind of sharing it, it becomes a cherished memory, I guess, to some
Core
extent.
memory, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so now obviously we're in the Ramadan, in the month of Ramadan at the moment, and um I'm kind of wondering, what does kind of creativity maybe for you look like during this month? And is it something that kind of, or how it might, I guess, influence a connection during your faith, for with your faith during this month?
Yeah, that's a good question you propose. I think it has played a huge role in how I engage with my faith in a lot of ways.
Mm.
One of them being trying to find different innovative ways to teach Islam in a fun and interactive way. Because I tutor students, and one of my main aims and goals have always been to make a prolonged impact in their lives.
Mm.
Um, Doing the best of my ability to shape the kids into developing good habits, good mannerisms, and really teaching them the sweetness of our deen, especially for the younger children, that because they're at that fundamental stage in learning and trying to understand what Islam is, why we're Muslim,
Mm.
and how our faith shapes who we are as people. But beyond teaching, I'd say that I've found that creativity is embedded within our faith itself.
Mm.
Even like exploring the tafsir of different surahs and truly understanding the deeper meanings.
Mm.
That in itself is an act of creativity. The way we reflect, interpret, and apply those teachings in our lives, it's pretty unique and subjective to each person. In fact, if we look at the quote that Ibn Qayyim once said, he said that the more a heart is filled with the love of Allah, the more creative it becomes in remembering Him. And I really like that, because it sort of highlights that creativity isn't just limited to the artistic expression, but it can also be in how we engage in dhikr, remembrance of Allah, or creating different sister circles, developing a strong bonded community. All of that portrays creativity. And I think this Ramadan, what I've personally been wanting to incorporate is good habits into my life. So what I've recently started to do is I like to create tafsir reminders or Friday reminders. I'll take an ayah from the Quran. It can be short or long. I'll understand its translation, then I'll dive deeper into the tafsir using authentic sources. And what I'll do is I'll then use my artistic element or stance, and I'll create a short message and I'll send it to friends. And I think just that simple act of creating a message, it creates a ripple effect between you and another family member or between you and multiple family members. And that's how meaningful messages get passed around.
Mm.
And it becomes a continuous source of enhancing your knowledge. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and
Yeah.
even and the Prophet, peace be upon him, in his hadith, he said, by saying seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. At the end of the day, the more you learn, the more you know, and the more your heart is filled with the love and connection to Allah, the more you're going to grow as a person.
Yeah,
Um, so
100%.
yeah,
Yeah, and I guess what you're saying in that sense of, it's not necessarily just, when we look at creativity through that artistic lens, it is something about kind of having a particular discipline and approach to life and how you exist, I guess, within the world and the space that you take up. And I think and it's such a lovely way, I think, to look at, I guess, our own inner selves within this month. And, like you said, that it kind of not only creates that connection with your own innermost, I guess, creative, kind of creative being. It is also about others, like you said, whether it's family or friends, and
absolutely.
definitely. So yeah, no, that's really lovely reflection. And maybe just to kind of delve in, a little bit deeper, how do you think that someone's creative roots might help kind of shape their identity? So, for example, you've spoken about the Quran, and obviously for many of us who I should speak for myself. Obviously, I'm not, I don't speak Arabic, but obviously, in terms of, I have that connection to Arabic because of the Quran. And then obviously we did the calligraphy workshop, and the idea of this workshop was to introduce people to I guess, to the basics of Islamic calligraphy. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how was it for you to attend that workshop? And then, yeah, and how do you think a space like that you kind of influences someone's creative roots and how to connect with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think someone's creative roots can hugely impact and profoundly shape their identity.
Mm,
Um, for example, a person who grew up being able to express themselves creatively, and that can be in the form of storytelling or poetry or journaling. They would use those avenues to process their emotions, and it only just leads them to develop an expressive personality um, into adulthood. Um, and individuals that withhold creativity as a core value and a core aspect of their life, um, they would find it easier to articulate their thoughts and beliefs and emotions. Just making them feel confident in their identity.
mm,
For example, like a child that's raised in a household where, let's say, Islamic calligraphy is encouraged from a young age, they may naturally associate that skill or passion and love for Islamic calligraphy in developing a willingness or personal connection to Islam.
mm,
And that is purely through their artistic expression. Another example could be a child that grows up in a home where Islamic architecture is admired,
mm,
whether that's through visiting mosques or observing the intricate patterns of different buildings or exploring museums. They may develop a fascination with the artistic precision behind Islamic design. And as they grow up, they may see that artistic precision as an extension of their faith.
mm.
So, yeah, I think definitely creative roots do shape how an individual is, their
Mm.
identity, um, everything about themselves. I do think that has a huge impact.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think again, what you're saying in terms of that breadth of what you can kind of see and engage in. So whether it is, the architecture, or certain designs when you go to the mosque, or I mean, obviously alongside the calligraphy workshop, you know, we did mindful henna, and obviously that pattern and design, and that kind of form of expression, and body art, and I guess the way that we create things, you know, yeah, I mean, on different mediums or through different mediums, I think is really interesting. Um, you know, like we're through the commission by Revolution Arts, you know, on Inspire Eid, we're hoping to have an installation which will have like a geometric design, and even in terms of geometry, and that, you know, it's coming back to what you're saying in terms of that precision. There's this like mathematical precision when it comes to geometry, but there's also this essence of the divine, because you know, when we look at these patterns and almost like take you beyond, you know, to the extent that you can look at a pattern and think, you know, this is infinite, right? And then you kind of it, for me anyway, I guess it does make you think about, you know, Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. And so
Absolutely.
much of our Islamic architecture or artistic work that we see come out from the Muslim world, I think definitely encapsulates that, you know, in many different spheres. And you know, like I guess I was thinking the idea that obviously you attended the workshop, and you know, there's various spaces I think that we, you know, nowadays maybe there is more activities available for us to kind of attend and have that sense of kind of fun or learning a new skill. How do you think it does help in terms of that community building? Because I know you touched upon it already, and especially for those of us who obviously we're Muslim, but we're living in Britain, we're, you know, born and bred here,
Hmm.
or however kind of that diaspora looks like, so to speak. So yeah, how do you think it kind of helps with that community, yeah, connections?
Yeah, I mean, so if so creativity can be reflected within our own culture and heritage. Um,
Mm,
now, for as someone being from a Pakistani descent, I think
mm,
creativity is definitely deeply constructed within our culture.
mm,
Now, I lived in Pakistan for 6 years, and I must say,
mm,
Pakistan is definitely home to beautiful Islamic architecture,
mhm,
and that's predominantly influenced by the Mughal Empire.
mm,
A prime example of this architecture is displayed in so many of the mosques in different cities.
mm,
Um, so I lived in Lahore, so the mosque in Lahore known as the Badshahi Masjid, that
mm,
was the intricate detail and the intricate work um within that mosque is stunning. Like you're in awe. The tile work from the large courtyards and the huge domes when you look up, it's beautiful. And the Mughals, they actually used red sandstone and
mm,
marble within their mosque construction. And if I'm not wrong, I think the sandstone it symbolizes strength and royalty,
mm,
and the marble invoked purity.
mm,
And this was often combined with intricate carvings. Now, these architectural designs were often a combination of Persian and Indian influences. Even some verses of the Quran were often inscribed within these Mughal buildings. So when we talk about community, we can then link it back to our own culture and our own heritage, and how creativity has a huge glance and impact within that in itself.
mm,
Um, Now, even if we were to look at um, textile artistry in our culture, if you were to look at bridal wear, you can see the intricate detail and the hard work that's beautifully woven within these designs. The fabric selection in itself has deep-rooted artistic spark. And you can tell that the craftsmen and the craftswomen that have created these pieces, they've spent years and even potentially their lifetime in perfecting the craft. And um, as a Pakistani woman, on her wedding day, she isn't just wearing a dress, but she's wearing a piece of history. And I think
mm.
that's really what amazes me. That woman is wearing centuries of tradition, and I find that really, really special. Another thing, if we were to look at our culture, is the poetry, that plays a significant role. If we were to look at the famous poet and the influential philosopher named Allama Iqbal and the work that he's done, his influence in the creation of Pakistan, and how he envisioned a separate Muslim state where Islam could be practiced freely. And it was his creative revolution that aimed at awakening the Muslim mind. So I definitely do think there's a lot of creativity that's reflected within our community, within our Pakistani heritage.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's really so nice to kind of hear from you. I was definitely getting goosebumps a little bit as well. I mean, for myself, I'm also a Pakistani heritage. I've visited like the Badshai mosque, and although it has been quite a few years now, and I'm looking forward to going back very soon. And yeah, and I think you're so right. This sense of, and again, what you said about even a bride, wearing a piece of history because of that, centuries of tradition. It definitely, I think, captures something really important and special, like you said, because I think sometimes maybe nowadays, because I guess because of social media and all that kind of obviously extra emphasis on aesthetics, I do sometimes feel that kind of sense of tradition, sometimes get lost because it's suddenly all about how good somebody looks, but we might sometimes forget actually, like you said, that there's so much history behind, certain designs and patterns and I think yeah, I think it's so important what you shared and such a nice reflection. And do you have any kind of I guess any thoughts on how social media kind of the influence that has had now on creativity? Because I know of course there's both, I guess, pros and cons, right? But yeah, but how do you think that's kind of manifesting itself in terms of, social media platforms and how we engage with creativity now compared to maybe, like back in the days.
Yeah, so I think social media has a profound impact on creativity. I'd say both and positively and negatively. The positive influences would probably be like the exposure to new ideas and trends. So like on platforms like Instagram and Pinterest and TikTok,
Mm,
we're able to expose ourselves to diverse artistic styles and different designs and unique concepts. And through social media, you have your that networking platform where you can connect like-minded individuals and share ideas. As well as that, you've got instant feedback and engagement of those
mm,
different trends and the sparks within the industry. So I think in that regard, I think social media does have a positive influence. In terms of negative influence, I would say of um, there's a lot of same content, and that can often lead to not there being much of original work out there, if that
mm,
makes sense.
yeah.
And trends, they often dictate um, other creative choices. So it makes it harder to explore traditional elements, like you were saying. Um, Other than that, I would say it also, other than that, excessive social media, it can reduce deep focus and it just makes it harder to really develop and think and truly reflect on innovative ideas. So I think to
Mm.
conclude, I think social media has both a positive and negative influence when it comes to creativity.
Yeah, no, I think you managed to you managed to do that really well. Like I think get both like you said, yeah, both the positive and the negative. And I guess really is just about having that balance in the way we navigate things. So yes, of course, it's so helpful when it comes to engagement and like you said, like introducing you to maybe something particularly new. But at the same time, as soon as something becomes a bit trending, you feel like you need to kind of jump on that in order to get that engagement. So yeah, sometimes I guess it can be a bit of a double-edged sword, but but again, at the same time, if you're able to utilize it to benefit your own creative journey, I think that's really the best way, to kind of engage with certain platforms. So, for sure, I think it's a really great time to have, I guess, that advancement in technology, and then be able to also spend time and pause and reflect, on the creative things that I guess, bring us joy, and again, that sense of community and connection. So yeah, I think it's really, hopefully, kind of sums up, I think, some of the discussion on the podcast today. And thank you so much, Hibah. It's been an absolute joy speaking to you.
Okay.
You've shared absolute gems, and I'm sure our listeners will take much benefit from it, inshallah. So, listeners, that is the Creative Roots podcast. This is an Imrana Mahmood production, commissioned and presented by Revolution Arts, supported by Inspire FM and Arts